all right, first, the basic idea, if you're not in America here, is we've got some crazy, like we always have our celebrities that are completely clueless. You know, they kind of protest like not exactly the right thing, you would think. So currently, like we have like the immigration thing, which has anytime there's law enforcement, you could have like problems, I've seen the problem. I'm not saying you give power to someone, you've got problems, but then if you try to equate those problems to like Anne Frank hiding in like during the Holocaust or something, or like to like Southern Democrats doing their like Southern plantation thing or something. I don't. Then it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to look at it rationally. So they're kind of doing those kind of comparisons. And the thing that's ironic is they're doing that at the exact same time as Iran is actually really being authoritarian. And so you would think if you're going to do the authoritarian thing, that's where you would point it, because the numbers there are clearly, they're really doing bad stuff, over there. So again, Hollywood just seems to be way off kilter in their and the way they're visual, like it's just this form of blindness that I just can't understand. So that's my basic mindset on this one. Uh, uh, let's see. You ever notice how some Hollywood elites narrate every single law enforcement like it's a grainy World War II footage narrative of like narrated by Morgan Freeman, I mean, but then dropped the very next tweet like Katy Perry's tweet. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about, and I'm not trying to pick on her just specifically, although she probably deserves to be picked on specifically. I'm just saying, like, this is the kind of thing. Her tweet, full of motivational speaker, turn your anger into action. This is a tweet that's been highlighted that we should put on our wall or something as motivational like thoughts compared to some of these. Turn anger into action that you're aiming at like law enforcement. I mean, even though dude, that's like empowerment. That's not empowerment. That's straight out of like the Dark Sith Handbook, aka the Communist Manifesto, special celebrity edition with glitter cover and like bonus playlists. I mean, dude, turn anger into action? That's your catch line? That's what you want on like your gravestone or something? Like how exactly are you going to turn anger into action? You're going to do interpretive dance in like a pussy hat, aggressively recycling protest signs into artisanal compost, or just rage posting while sipping ethically sourced oat milk lattes while you're encouraging like poor people to do stuff that's really not in their interest at this point in time, not exactly where their anger, if they need to be angry, then I think there's places it might be more suitably put. So when regular people say law and order, suddenly it's fascism to Hollywood. But when celebrities say mobilize your rage, it's suddenly a wellness campaign, complete with affirmations and a side-sponsored sparkling water. Turn anger into action. It's basically handing out emotional flamethrowers, but only if they come with a pastel peace sticker slapped on the side and a QR code for the merch shop. That's not a slogan. That's like a super villain internship application. Darth Vader's PR team would be proud. Be like, good. Let the outrage flow through you. Click the link in bio. Complete your journey to the dark side. Now with 20% off limited edition rage crystals and virtual meet and greet with Emperor Palpatine himself, otherwise known as who's that lady that just got fired? Kathleen Kennedy. That's the true identity. They finally completed the story. And apparently anger is super dangerous unless it's celebrity certified, ethnically sourced, carbon neutral, and conveniently timed for the next tour date. So modern rule unlocked. No unauthorized emotions allowed. All outrage must be studio approved, focus group tested, and come with a trigger warning for the wrong kind of rage. Otherwise, it's just problematic. So anyway, again, I just like, can't you just calibrate things so that we can have like a normal discussion about them? You know, you can't just you can't just make these absurd comparisons and then like expect like a normal like like a level-headed anyway, I don't know. Okay. let's see, let's try to, I'll skip the song and do my review of the Merlin. Just a quick comment. I don't, I'm not an expert on the reviews, but as far as I know, and again, I'm a little biased. I am a proud Daily Wire subscriber since inception. So I already saw like the first 2 episodes, when they released it a while, like in, I guess around Christmas now. And so I did a little review on that one. And now and now they released like the 3rd one. So I think so here's my thing on this. Like when Netflix started doing this like thing where they went from movies to like TV shows, I thought that would be really good because you can take something like a Lord of the Rings and instead of having to invest in like a 3-movie trilogy that are all like 2 to 3 hours long, you can do a series and you can just make it as long as you need to fit the content that you're trying to adopt like a book. It's perfect for a book, right? You take the book, I'm not going to squeeze it into 2 hours or whatever. I'm going to make it so it fits. But what they did instead is they ruined the books and then made the shows as if they're like soap opera TV shows, right? They just wrote the show. You can see it in Star Wars. Like even the trilogy, their main trilogy that they're going to base their theme parks on and all of their other stuff under, I think Kathleen Kennedy is like the main kind of culprit here they wrote it without even thinking about a general arc that would go through all 3, right? How are you going to start a trilogy that's your main epic trilogy without even thinking about a slight through line through the movies, right? It's amazing to me. And how do you take a book that's already been done and then write it like a soap opera as if you don't know the storyline, right? It drives me crazy. Like so I feel like if you did that right though, then that would be a great way to do it, because then you can so I think, I don't know, I got like on the Daily Wire, I obviously signed up just because I think Mr. Shapiro does a really good job of picking and describing topics in a way that's good and somewhat objective. Like he tries to lay out what he's pretty clearly, I feel like, better than anyone else. So I didn't really think much about their movies and stuff. They had some other movies before, and they were a little too gritty for me. They were like super gritty and like, I was like, I was little, I don't know. I wasn't really into it. So, but that's fine. But this one seems to be like in the area. I used to read those kind of books that were like, I don't know, the movies that came out now are George R.R. Martin, right? The Game of Thrones. I read those books. I read the Wheel of Time books and stuff. So this is kind of like that, but I never read the guy who wrote these books, and I think in part because I was trying to think about this. So it kind of feels like the books that are popular right now, they took the things from the old stories, but they kind of made their own world. So you don't really have to know anything going into it. Like you could go into George R.R. Martin's books, Game of Thrones, by just knowing like kind of what knights are. You don't even really need to know that. And then he builds the whole world. Same with Brandon Sanderson, right? He builds the whole world. You don't need to have any pre-knowledge of what's going on. And it used to be stories, I think they used to have multiple levels, which was kind of the art of storytelling before, it seems to me. Meaning you'd like a story where a young person can watch it, and it's got action, and it's got like, drama and whatnot, and you can take a message from it or whatever, see it at that level and just have it as entertainment. But then it would be nice if there was another level of like meaning that might tie into something that you might be into, like more from a nerdy standpoint, So like, for example, the Arthur, and I think that's kind of what they're trying to do here. Like, you could watch it as just like an entertainment show, like a Game of Thrones or whatever. People are comparing it to the Game of Thrones because obviously that's a popular one, but so you could kind of just watch it that way, but I think you can also kind of watch it like there's some more like nerdy stuff, I guess, in certain genres, right? Meaning you could make an Arthurian book or an Arthurian movie that's based on all the Arthurian nerdy stuff, right? So the Arthurian nerds would be picking up on all this stuff, but if you're not into it, then it wouldn't be for you. But if you made it so it had a cool story and the nerds can pick up on it, see, now you've added another level. So multiple people can get it on multiple levels. The same thing with like history. Like, you could say this takes place, I think, like when Rome was pulling back from Britain. So they kind of reached into Britain. They were kind of guarding some of the Britons there from invasions from the Saxons, And then they pulled back, as far as I can tell, right? Because they were getting hit in the center in Rome. So they pulled back, and then that's when the Saxons come in and start taking out or start taking territory or whatever, terrorizing parts of Britain, right? So that's kind of like the time frame, because now you don't have any protection. So the Romans came in and they actually cleared all the roads. As far as my understanding, it's like they cleared the roads, they cut the trees down and whatnot, and then they had to pull back, which made the people there more vulnerable, because now when the Saxons come in, there's no trees. They mold over all the hills, right? They got these big Roman roads that they can just march over. So if there's more people, they can so it's actually kind of worse after the Romans left, right? So I that's how I kind of, anyways, you can see it from like a historical standpoint. And then it also has some biblical kind of stuff to it as well, which again, you could write a story that just has biblical callbacks, but if you're watching it without those callbacks, you wouldn't know. So the way this writer, the book writer, writes, it seems like he's trying to weave those three things together, it seems like to me. So so I would think you want a surface level action book that you could read on one level, but then you're trying to tie together historical context, which is the time frame, roughly where Arthur's legend kind of is, but we kind of watered all that down in later Arthur legend. So now you got kind of that. So you've got like some historical story that you can go, you can ask Ara about it when you watch it, and then you got some biblical stuff in there, like, and so again and then you've got some, and then because that's the point in time when I think Christianity was going through Rome, right? And then Britain was still like pagan, but they weren't like Roman pagan. They weren't like Greco-Roman pagan. They were their own pagan, right? They had their own thing going on over there, I think. So now the Romans that became Christianized are going into Britain, I think, right? So there's like this whole thing of now there's the pagan gods over there and the one God kind of thing. So there's clearly going to be that going on. I think that's clear with the author, and then so you've got that, and then you've got the Arthurian thing, so it's kind of an interesting combination. So anyways, that's the way I see it. The third one, I think it's pretty good. I don't, nobody knows. People say, well, they're no-name actors, and it's like, yeah, they're all no-name actors at this point. The era of the Hollywood superstar, I think, is over. So I just did they do a good job? I think they did a pretty good job. I thought, it didn't totally pull me out. Like sometimes, like I like Keanu Reeves is almost funny because sometimes he says stuff that's like kind of pulls you out. Like he's good in The Matrix, but in most other movies you're like, dude, like he kind of says some stuff where it's like where he kind of pull like it's like so he I don't so I didn't hear anything really like I didn't really get pulled out. I'm not a connoisseur of actors or anything, but I didn't have any of them say something so out of character or their mannerisms that were like that pulled me out of the story or anything. So I thought it was pretty good. And then I think they had like an action, and they had an action scene and a fight scene. You're not gonna get the big, like huge like action scenes like Braveheart, where you've got whole rows of horses and a giant armies like in real battlefield like lineup, without CGI, fighting each other. But they did go up there and do a real like live battle, like not CGI. I don't think, as far as I can tell, they went out there and actually did the battle scene within a castle. And I think that's part of his thing, right? He couldn't really do the Lord of the Rings is almost too epic because you'd have to have battles that are so giant. That's part of the thing with it. Whereas the Arthurian books, they have battles and stuff, but it's more like smaller tribes. So you can kind of that's something you can kind of manage. You can kind of manage like a small little castle on a dirt ground castle, getting fighting there and stuff. So I thought they had an action, a good action bit on this one. Merlin was kind of more introduced in the third one. He's kind of like not as introduced in the first two, so he's kind of there in the third one. And so I kind of feel like you don't need to know too much to know the story. Like now that at this part of the story, it's pretty much you can just watch it on a surface level. Like the Merlin guy shows up, and then there's some following of the storyline. Like they had to find the water under the castle, which is an Arthurian kind of standard Arthurian thing. They told me I shouldn't do it, but I built my castle on a moat, and the moat sank. And then I built the second castle on the moat, and that one sank. And then I built the third one, and it burned down, fell over, and then sank. But the fourth one, that one's okay. So that's like, anyway, that's from Monty Python. So that's standard Arthur stuff. And then, and it takes place like from the Arthur standpoint, like when in the Arthur story, I think like you've got Uther is Arthur's dad. And so it's like in Uther's time frame, and Merlin's like young Merlin because he's old when he trains Arthur traditionally, except like in the TV show, that one they made Arthur young, which was kind of weird. But I kind of like that BBC TV show because it was just like it was just like a nothing thing to watch. It was kind of just like So I while you're doing something. But anyways, Arthur, I feel like he's supposed to be old when he trains Arthur, and he was around like back in the day when Arthur's dad became like king. But at first it wasn't Arthur's dad, it was Arthur's dad, Uther Pendragon's brother. So right now it's like the older brother who is like the one that's might become king and stuff. But I think the legend kind of follows like the Bible thing, where it's like oftentimes it's like the younger one that becomes the one that kind of sets things up more. So the older one seems like a good guy, but like I think he's gonna die. And then the younger one, which is Uther Pendragon, I would assume from the Arthur legends, it hasn't happened yet. I'm just talking Arthur legend. I'm not really trying to give spoilers. I'm just telling you the Arthur story as far as I know it. So if that's a spoiler, I don't know if that counts as a spoiler. I don't feel like it should because it's kind of riffing off the Arthur. So if they're doing the Arthur story, then like you would think that the younger one like would become Uther, obviously, and then the Arthur would come later. So that's why you have young Merlin, not like young Merlin like in the BBC TV show when young Merlin was training Arthur or growing up with Arthur, which was kind of weird, but it's still kind of like like I was kind of like okay, whatever. But that didn't seem right to me at all. Like this seems more right.